These are the March workshop session number 2 for clubs that are struggling or want to increase their membership without getting a club coach, because we recognize that getting a coach is a rare thing these days. We haven't had a lot of coach volunteers, but we still want to help our clubs. So we've put together these 2 workshops. This is the second of the 2 workshops. First, I want to thank Katie for organizing and handling all of the Zoom things tonight. Katie is the Zoom master, and she's going to be fantastic at this. So here are the March workshops session number 2. My name is Greg Schulz. I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. I am the district's retention chair, club retention chair this year, among my many roles. I have other roles as well, but that's the one that I am counting on for tonight. Our workshop this evening will consist of club fun, and we'll talk about all the interesting ways that we know of, and maybe even some that we don't know of, ways to bring fun to your club and why that's important. We'll also talk about low attendance modifications for meetings. What should you do if you have a shortage of people that come to your meeting? How low can you go on your people count for an actual meeting? And when should you cancel? Because there is an appropriate time to cancel. And we're going to talk about hybrid meetings. Hybrid means holding a meeting online and in person at the same time. How you handle that, what kind of equipment you need, what kind of allowances you need to make, all those kinds of great little details. So we'll get started right away. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that if you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat, and we will answer them at the end in the Q&A section. So I'm going to kind of roll right through, but if you do have a question, we want to get you an answer, please put it in the chat and we'll address it when we get down to the Q&A section at the end. We'll have a little time for discussion there. So let's get going and talking about club fun. Club fun. You have to ask yourself, would I show up more if it was more fun? There's a couple of processes here that go on in our brains when we figure out what are the things we want to do. And as humans, naturally, we choose the things that are more fun to do. We just do. Toastmasters only works when you show up. Doesn't work if you're watching TV at home. Toastmasters works when you show up. So you have to show up. Would you show up if your club's meeting was a little more fun? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. As an aside to this, my standing advice for any individual who is looking to find a Toastmasters club and join a Toastmasters club is to visit several clubs. Choose the club that has the most fun and go there. And the reason I do that is because when you're new, you don't have discipline. It's not a habit to go to Toastmasters, but you got a better chance of showing up if you're going to have fun. So that's my standing advice on how to pick a Toastmasters club. We have a lot of fun ideas. In fact, I've got 2 slides full of fun ideas. So we'll start with the first club fun idea. For a club meeting, you can rearrange the room. Have it be a different layout. Put the lectern at the other end of the room. Put the lectern at the side. Have a wide table. Have 2 tables that stretch out instead of 1. Make it into a Y or a V. Make it a round table. Find a classroom and use desks. Change it up a bit. Give it a different layout. All of these things actually will contribute to building member skills as they have to learn to move out of their comfort zone of having the lectern at the left end of the room, because this week it's at the right end, or this week it's along the right side. And that changes things, and that provides a little bit of variety, which leads to a little bit of fun. So try a different room layout. This is a great idea that you can do at the spur of the moment, actually. You can have your sergeant at arms, when they're setting up the room, simply rearrange the room and put it up the other way. Adds fun, it adds a challenge. It's a great idea. So try a different room layout. The next one is a joint meeting with another club. if you want to have a good time, get two clubs together that meet at the same time and have a joint meeting and everybody in one room. Get some people from one of the clubs to do some roles and get some people from the other clubs to do some roles and switch back and forth. Get a speaker from one club and an evaluator from the other club if you're ever going to do this. That's a lot of fun. It makes the meeting more interesting. And of course, it's not something you're going to be doing every day, but a joint meeting with another club is a great idea to have some fun. It brings new people in. You get new responses to your questions. If you're asking table topics questions and they're the same old questions, you're going to get new answers because you got new people. And that really is going to spur a little bit of activity, especially if you're having a joint meeting and you're planning it in advance. You can say, who wants to give a speech at the joint meeting? And that's a great idea. It's a great load of fun for doing that. You can pick roles from a hat. Now, some clubs actually operate this way and they don't produce their club meeting roster on the agenda with all the roles filled until the beginning of the meeting. And they say, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? It's not really the way a club should be run. A normal club runs on pre-planned agendas at least the week before. At the end of the previous meeting, everybody knows what they're doing next week, and many clubs schedule them out or longer than that throughout the month or 2 months ahead in order to know when they're giving a speech, when they're the Toastmaster, when they're the table topics master. But if you want to have fun, put slips of paper with one roll on each slip of paper, put them in a hat or a bag or a cup, and everybody draws their roll when they get to the meeting. And that's a little bit of a twist because the person who's the grammarian has got to provide the word of the day, doesn't know they're the grammarian until that moment. And then they've got to come up with some things. And you can even do the same thing with the theme of the meeting so that you can pull the theme of the meeting from another hat so that everybody has the same theme. Rolls from a hat. This is a great way to add a little bit of on the spur of the moment to a club meeting. And it's fun. It's fun, and people don't always do terrific at this, but that's the whole point. The whole point is to be able to throw something like a little wrench into the situation and see how we can recover at a meeting. Rolls from a hat, very last minute, very much spur of the moment, and a lot of fun. So that's a great fun. You could have your meeting themed with costumes. You could have a baseball meeting where everybody dresses up as a baseball player. You could have another sport. You could do football or soccer or hockey or anything like that. You could have a spring meeting where everybody comes dressed up as their favorite Easter bunny. You could do whatever you want to have a themed meeting with costumes. This is really fun if your club actually has a meeting on Halloween, which is a traditional costume-filled day. So you can have a themed meeting with costumes. If you pick a theme for this and then everybody tries to get their costume to go around that theme, it's a blast. I did see one of these in action. It was called the 1920s Murder Mystery. And that was the theme, 1920s murder mystery. And everybody showed up in their best suits and they had ties on and everything seemed old and the ladies wore dresses. It was really a fantastic meeting. We had such fun with that. And then we all tried to talk Old English during that meeting. And I failed dramatically, but it was so much fun. We had a great time. And actually that meeting spurred a few members to start coming to our meetings again. So that was a fun one. You can have a costume party. This is kind of the same thing, but this is just a costume party. No theme on this one. You just pick costumes and you dress up and you can have a costume party. And as part of your table topics, you can have people explain their costume and you can have people try to sell you that their costume is the best. And thereby you have a costume contest for table topics. And so a costume party is great for that kind of thing. That's another thing that you can do with costumes. I've never seen this one done, but I've always wanted to try it because it would be interesting to see some of my friends dress up in their costumes and try to tell me why their costume is the best. It would be a great table topic to do that. So there's a fun idea for that one. Some more fun club ideas that we've got is the reverse meeting. Anybody ever try this one? Yeah, the reverse meeting. This is a blast, especially if you're the speech evaluator. Now, the whole meeting runs in reverse. So what you do is you start with the adjournment of the meeting, and then you have your fill in your roles for next week's meetings, and then you move backwards throughout the whole meeting, and you have the reports first. So if you have a speech, you have a speech evaluator who says, I think you did a great job on this speech. You did that, you did that, you did that. I noticed that you used the word Winnebago 3 times in your speech. And I was wondering about the continuity of that, but then you got to the punchline at the end, and I really thought you brought it all together. So now whoever's giving a speech has got to use the word Winnebago 3 times in their meeting, in their speech. And they've got to have a punchline at the end that ties it all together. This is really a challenge. So get an advanced speaker. But these kinds of things are fun, especially when you have a timer who says, you know, your table topics went 2.5 minutes and you get a question that you don't know very much about and can't go for 2.5 minutes on your table topics. It's a reverse meeting. Loads of fun. Plan this in advance. Make sure everybody has roles, knows what's going on, knows what they're doing. Make sure you have the table topics picked out. This is a beautiful idea to add some fun. I would not do this meeting every month. I would not do this meeting every other month. I would keep this meeting to a minimum, you know, once a year at max, twice a year, that kind of thing, because it does take quite a bit of planning to make the reverse meeting go wonderful. But this one is quite popular, quite popular. You can do progressive story table topics to add some fun. Progressive story table topics is sometimes called round robin. It's where the table topics master takes their 2 minutes to lay out the beginning of a story. And then the next table topics person gets their 2 minutes to add on to the story, and so on until you get through all of the table topics. So by the end, you have a whole interestingly built story for your table topics where the whole idea is to keep the story moving. So you can add characters, you can have things happen, you can give them challenges. As your turn moves on, you add to the story. So everybody's table topic contributes to that story. If you do one of these, I advise you, get your phone laid out on the table there and record it because it's going to be funny. These things are very funny. Somebody will bring in a twist that you never heard of, and by the time that it gets to be your turn to do this, it's going to be a challenge because you've heard parts of the story so far, and you got to kind of involve things and get them molded together and come up with a good 1.5 minute, 2 minutes of your part of the story, and then the next person gets to go. And it gets pretty challenging, but that's a great way to add a little fun to the club. A debate is a fantastic way to get club fun going on. Now, don't debate politics. Don't debate religion. Don't do it. Don't do it. But debate whether strawberry ice cream or chocolate ice cream is the best. And everybody gets a chance to do that during the table topics and remind us which flavor is the best. Pick something like that, but you can do a debate and you can have people fall down on each side of the story and that kind of thing. So those are a great, great time to do that. But stay away from the table topics of politics and stay away from religion. You can have a speechathon. Now, we do have a speechathon in our club about every other year because it seems like we end up quite frequently near the end of the calendar year where we want to do a major push to get to awards and people need to do speeches. So we'll have a meeting and that meeting will be longer than an hour, but we'll accommodate everybody who wants to give a speech during that meeting. That's a fun way to do it, to have a bunch of different speeches in a meeting. I'll tell you what, I learn more at a speechathon than I do at a regular club meeting. And that's really the only time we have a ton of speeches. We forego the table topics at that meeting because we don't have time, but it's filled with speeches and speech evaluations so that folks can make their speech requirements for their awards before the end of the term. A speechathon, it's a fun kind of activity. It's a different kind of a meeting and it's a lot of fun. So you can do that. You can have an outright lie meeting. An outright lie meeting is where everybody exaggerates the truth completely, all the way to the end. And you can start that with the uh, person who opens your meeting, the sergeant at arms. Sergeant at arms opens your meeting and introduces the president, but it's not the president of the club they introduce, it's the president of the United States. And you introduce, and you take everything to the extreme in the outright lie meeting, just seeing how far over the top you can make everything go. And you perpetuate that through the whole meeting, through the table topics, through your timers report, where you have 6 people that spoke for 32 or 33 minutes apiece during your 1-hour meeting. I don't know how the math works, but it's an outright lie meeting and it's a lot of fun. So add that to your inventory of fun club ideas. So that's the end of the club fun ideas. There's a article that is available that I will have a link for at the end that can point you to those club fun ideas and explain them a little bit more. They're great ideas, and they bring a lot of fun. And fun, remember, helps your attendance at a meeting, because if people have a good time, they'll come back. You know, if you discourage them and they don't have a good time, or they don't learn anything, or there's no value, they're not going to come back. This way, there's fun and there's value, but you know, you got to keep them there. So, all right, we're going to move into one of my favorite sections, which is a low attendance meeting roles. When you have low attendance and you're short on people, the most common thing for people to do is say, like, oh, I'll be the Toastmaster and the general evaluator and the grammarian and the counter, and everybody adds on to their meeting roles. If you happen to have a low attendance meeting and you have a guest at the same time, do you think it makes a good impression on the guest that everybody has to end up doing a ton of things? So I'm with you. I really don't think it makes a good impression. I think what you should do when you have a low attendance meeting is cut roles out and just do them next week. So that's why we have reduced roles, because you don't want to overburden somebody and you don't want to stick somebody into a role that they're not prepared to deliver. You want to let them have just one role, and you want to let them do a good job of it, regardless of whether you have guests or not. But if you have guests, it's especially important. So as we think about this, what modifications seem to make sense, right? Sorry, I advanced too fast there. What modifications make sense when having a meeting with low attendance? Well, right away, you can start dropping things that are kind of considered minor roles, right? You could get by for a meeting without an counter. You can do it. You can get by without a grammarian. You can do that. You can drop the speaker and the evaluator if you don't have a speech. If you're having low attendance, it's not likely that you'll have a speech anyway. But if you do have a speech, you can keep the speech and the evaluator, but then you can drop some other things. You can drop table topics, not the activity of table topics, but you can drop somebody being the table topics master, and that is an easy role to pull cards from. Does everybody have the table topics card box for their club? Okay, if you don't have the table topics card box, get a chat pack even and just have it on standby at the club. So when you don't have a table topics master, you can just pull cards and answer those. That's something then that you don't need to have something prepared in advance in order to do. That's a reduced role. Even though you're still having table topics, it means that there's no study in advance. There's no brainstorming trying to come up with questions. You just pull them out of the box and do it from the chat pack or from the actual table topics box. Okay. Here's another modification that does make sense. On occasion, you'll have the Toastmaster be the general evaluator as well. You should still have a timer if you have any speaking going on whatsoever. But that's why you should have reduced roles, is because of stress. You don't want to give an impression of stress to anybody, and you don't want to overload anybody with actual too many roles. So that's why we should do that. So those modifications make sense, right? Get rid of some of those roles. Our club has a thing called a listener, and we drop the listener on a regular basis just because we don't have enough people to do it. It's a good thing to keep the meeting running clean. Don't have somebody doing 3 or 4 different roles. Just drop the role and move on with the meeting. Now, how low can you go? How many people can you be short on for a meeting? Well, you've got your Toastmaster, your general evaluator, your table topics, your speaker, your evaluator, your grammarian, your counter. I'm at 7 right now. What happens if we only have 4? Do we still have a meeting? Yeah, you still have a meeting if you only have 4 people. How low can you go? Can you go down to 3 people? Yeah, you can still have a meeting with 3 people. You have a Toastmaster. You have somebody who does table topics. Your meeting's over. It'll end a little early, but it'll be all right. Can you go down to 2 people and still have a meeting? The answer is yes. You can still have a meeting with 2 people. It does not follow standard Toastmaster formats, but you should still meet. You should still practice your speech. You should still practice your table topics. You can still have one of the 2 people maybe bring a word of the day, but you should ask each other table topics, and you should still meet and still practice. I promise you, from my experience, I can tell you there is value in meeting with a reduced number of people. I've actually gone to a meeting and been part of a meeting where there was only 2 people, and I still learned something. I would do it again, and I would say, in my personal opinion, there is never a time to cancel a meeting, except that there is a time to cancel a meeting, and that is when attending the meeting would put someone in personal danger. If you're having a blizzard, a snowstorm, an ice storm, don't go to the meeting. Cancel the meeting. You can have it online. Our next topic is hybrid meetings, how to have it online, but your in-person connections should be canceled for that particular meeting, especially if it puts someone's life in danger to get there. That's the only time to cancel. You don't cancel because it's spring and you want to do something different. You still have the meeting because you can have a meeting with only 2 people. It's kind of an important thing not to skip a meeting. And the reason is your meeting information is on the web. You could have a surprise guest. And how would you feel if you were the surprise guest and you went there and there was no meeting? You wouldn't come back. So your club would miss out on a guest. And a guest is a person who's looking for a club, who wants to be asked to join. So when should you cancel? Only in-person meetings, in physical person meetings, and when getting there would cause personal risk. Okay, so we're down to hybrid meetings. Hybrid meetings are really, really important. The purpose of a hybrid meeting is to get some of your people together in person so they can have some fun. There's a lot that is missed in online meetings. With a hybrid meeting, you get higher attendance numbers. You get more people in the room, you got all those folks, but then you get some folks that are online as well. We had a hybrid meeting this week on Wednesday. Katie was actually a participant in our hybrid meeting this week on Tuesday morning. So we add hybrid meetings. The attendance numbers is really what you're going after. You want as many people as possible to get to the meeting. That's why you have a hybrid meeting. The social fun in a hybrid meeting is higher than the online meetings. Now let's think about that. In an online meeting, you don't have that split moment before everything's going or when things are getting set up to have that social interaction. In an in-person meeting, when the sergeant at arms is putting the banner up, you might be helping put the lectern out, you might be distributing agendas, you all are interacting and talking, and you're finding out how things are going with people, and you're having that social moment of fun. In an online meeting, that doesn't happen. You miss that social fun. So that's why you have a hybrid meeting. Now, those folks that join online, at the beginning, they might hear some of that stuff, and that might encourage them to come in person. And they might be able to respond to some of that stuff, but it's not going to be as good as if you were in person. So COVID is kind of ending. It's kind of ending. And we're starting to get back to a lot of clubs who want to meet in person. Many of them can't meet in person because they have now got new members who are online only members. So you have to adopt the hybrid meeting for this. And the hybrid meeting offers that social fun to those attendance folks who are at the meeting. That's important. You're going to have more remote members attending when you have hybrid meetings because there's no travel to a hybrid meeting, right? I can get up late in the morning. Our club meeting meets at 7 a.m. I can get up late and still make it to the online portion of the meeting if I want to be a remote attendee. After work, I can get home, I can make dinner, I can eat some dinner, and then hit my meeting without having to have travel time in there. It makes things a lot easier. So you'll have more remote members attending a hybrid meeting than you would if it was just an in-person only meeting. I mean, that only makes sense because it's more convenient, right? It's easier for them to get there. And as we wind down on COVID now, it's easier to social distance at a hybrid meeting. Everybody's in their own house, right? Except for all the folks at the actual meeting. And those folks aren't crammed into the space. They can be spread out more because there's fewer of them at the actual meeting place. So it's a little easier to social distance on that. And a hybrid meeting is an inclusive meeting. Everybody can come. Everybody can come. If you can't make it in person, we'll see you online. It's an inclusive meeting. If you can't join by your computer, you can join by your phone. If you can't join by your phone, you can join by your laptop or perhaps even your tablet. So there are some things to consider when we have hybrid meetings. You have to consider your physical meeting location. You have to consider your video feed and your audio feed. For your physical meeting location, you want to make sure that it's safe. It's got to be a safe location, easily accessible, quiet. You don't want to have disturbing noises happen at the physical meeting location. You want it to be comfortable. So right now, even though it's the second day of spring, I'm going to say that meeting in the pavilion in the park is not a comfortable location because it's cold and windy, right? It might be safe and it might be quiet, but it's not comfortable. And it's certainly not accessible. At this point, you'd have some trouble getting to the pavilion in our local park because they don't plow it out. You'd have several feet of snow to wade through. But you want your physical meeting location to be accessible. You want to have a decent sized parking area. You want to have it easy enough to get into the building and find the physical meeting room. You want it to be accessible. You also want it to be distraction free, and that goes along with quiet, but distractions aren't always noisy, are they? If you have kids running in the hallway, even though they're running, and even though there might be a little noise there with the door closed, you'll see them as they go by, and that's a distraction. And if you have the windows wide open and there's stuff going on outside, that could be a distraction as well. You want to minimize those distractions. So you want a safe, quiet, comfortable accessible and distraction-free meeting environment. You also want to have a strong internet connectivity at your physical meeting location. And the reason for that is you're going to have more than one connection to the online meeting. In our club, we usually have 3 every week that are in the meeting room. And we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about video right now. You have 2 or 3 video devices. You have one from the back of the room aimed at the lectern area in a wide view at all times. Everybody can look at that camera and see what's going on. They can see somebody walk up to the lectern. They can see somebody else come up, shake their hand, and then the first person goes away. There's somebody up there that's handling that, and they can see the lectern at all times. We have one laptop that faces the speaker at the front, at the lectern. That laptop faces the speaker, and that has all of the guests on in the gallery view, so that if you're asking a question and a guest raises their hand, they can be seen on the Zoom. They can be seen by whoever is speaking at the front. So one laptop aiming there. And you might have additional movable laptops to turn towards seated speakers. You know that when you give a report, you stay at your seat. That's what I mean by seated, not actually sitting down. But when you, like, if you give the timers report, you stand up at your location and you give your timers report. This is the laptop that they'll spin around and aim in your direction so that everybody at home or everybody on Zoom can see you giving your timers report. So that there is 3 devices. And that's why you want to have a good, strong internet connection wherever you're at. You have 3 devices attached to the Zoom. Now, you're going to have to switch off and all that kind of stuff, but that's available for the attendee to do when you use the gallery view in the Zoom. And that's how you do the video. So what we do, it seems to be working. We don't get complaints. So that seems to work. The audio. Now this is important because if you have more than one audio connection that is unmuted, you're going to get echoes all over the place. And that echo is going to advance itself until it becomes feedback. And it's going to be terrible and you're not going to be able to hear it. So what we do is we do one audio connection and we use a external speaker. And I've got a couple of examples here. Here, this is a brick speaker. It's pretty big. It puts out a lot of volume. This is on occasion maybe just a little too loud for our small room, but this is a USB, this is a speaker. This one is Bluetooth. This is a Bluetooth speaker. There are others that are smaller and bigger. This is the one we use every week because we know that the volume on this thing is going to be too loud and we end up turning it down just a little bit. Use a speaker like that, attach it to the one device that is not muted. All other devices are muted. And then because it's a wireless speaker, you can move it around and set it in front of the person who's speaking if it's necessary. Now, when I speak, you don't need to move that speaker in front of me because I'm loud. I'm noisy. I'm terribly, terribly noisy. But when my wife talks and she talks in a quieter voice, we move the speaker right in front of her because that's also where the microphone is, and it picks up her voice so that it can be heard by those remote attendees much more easier. So that's the audio summary. Again, one audio connection that is not muted, all others muted. Use a Bluetooth speaker and move it around if necessary. All right, so now we're up to the Q&A part, and what I'm going to do is come back to the Zoom and I'm going to stop sharing.